Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. So happy to have you here at the edge of the universe, where we're going to talk today about Howl's Moving Castle, the book more than the movie, although we were just having a discussion about the movie here. And I will poke Jared at one point during this podcast to get his opinion on that, which I find utterly fascinating and completely wrong. So I'm looking forward to a discussion on that. Happy to have all of you here, whether you're watching us live or picking us up on recording. My name is. Oh well, actually, let me do an announcement first, and we'll get into that. Next month, if you should be a regular consumer of these podcasts because honestly, they're the best that you could find on the web. I think it's a justification for the whole internet itself. Next month is Leviathan Wakes by James Corey. We're going to talk about book to movie adaptations, especially in that one, although we are going to talk a little bit about that in this one as well. I am your host today. I go by many names. Mr. C is the one that most people know me as that's my one of my teacher names. I write books under Christopher J.H. Jones and Chris Jones. I'm a professor of logic, rhetoric, and poetics at Mount Liberty College, which we would love to have you check out at mountlibertycollege.org. I have been a professional writer now for about a decade. I went pro about a decade, to use Stephen Pressfield's terminology. And I was at the third ever LTUE conference a bazillion years ago now. And LTUE is, bar none, my favorite writing conference of all, anywhere in the world. And I've been to a lot of them. I think LTUE is one of a kind. And I bring my writing students, teach writing workshops to teenagers and think they're teenagers. And I bring them all to that conference every year. It's worth doing. With us today, we have Ray, we have Amy, and we have Jared. Going in that order, you want to take just a minute to introduce yourself. Ray, you first.
Sure. I've been involved in every stage of a book's life. As a writer, editor, retailer, reader, and reviewer, I've worked 4 part-time jobs at once. Thankfully, one of them actually paid me. I received my bachelor's in English from Brigham Young University, and now I live in the Tri-Cities of Washington with my husband and Aussie dog. You might see them in the background. I am also the author of I don't know if it'll show with my blurred screen, but the Haunted Romance series. Yeah, cover my face, maybe that works. The Haunted Romance series, my Dreaming Princesses series, and Dead and Back Again. The sequel to this one is coming out in early September. September 5th is the estimated date.
Hi, everyone. I'm
Terrific.
Amy Trent. Oh, sorry, I jumped in. Sorry, Chris.
Go right ahead.
I'm Amy Trent. I love to retell fairy tales that are obscure that people probably haven't heard of, but if you have heard of them, let's be best friends. And my books are for women. They're no spice. They're cozy, life affirming. I'm really excited to talk about Howl's Moving Castle because it kind of created the cozy fantasy genre, or like it's a tentpole of the genre.
And Jared.
I am Jared Garrett. I also write under the pen name Jerry Ironspear. My Jared Garrett pen name is for my contemporary fiction coming of age stuff. Jerry Ironspear is for my science fiction and fantasy. I just published my 12th novel the other day, literally like a few days ago. That's actually my romance side under the different pen name J.G. Nathan. Books, basically, contemporary. It would not be an exaggeration to say books saved my life from a very, very bleak childhood in a terrible cult that started in England in the 60s. We're not going to talk about that here, but that actually, interestingly, that started my Anglophile-ness, and Diana Wynne Jones is one of the big authors in that area as well. I love this book. I think it's really, really cool. I love a lot of her stuff, and I don't like the movie. Just going to lay that out there. Well, I guess we'll get into it at some point. I have a lot of books. I have, for science fiction fantasy, I have the God and the Sword trilogy. I have Beat and Push series. It's called the Bug Chronicles, and then I have a standalone called The Seer. And I'm excited to talk about this book. It's going to be a lot of fun. It was good to reread it. It's really a favorite.
Happy to hear that. And you followed one of the first rules of handling interviews, and that is if there's something that you know that the presenter is going to poke you about, you get it in first. So then it sort of loses its punch. You already said you didn't like the movie.
I've been doing this for a moderator as well, so I got you.
Well, that's professional work. I know it when I see it. All right, should we just start right at the beginning? Let's start with the beginning. The opening line of the novel, the first sentence of a novel. Everybody, I'm not going to talk about covers here. Doesn't really work for this particular book. But the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover, there's a reason that we say that, and that is because we all do judge books by their cover, right? But because we're authors and we've all had books, I'm certain of this, with terrible covers. I don't know if you're the same as me, but I don't judge the book entirely by its cover, but I do judge a book entirely by its open. If the cover is meh, or even if the cover is great, and maybe even especially if the cover is great, I'm going to crack the book open and I'm going to give it a paragraph. And if the first paragraph leaps off the page at me, I'm probably going to buy the book. And if it doesn't, maybe I'll buy it, maybe, whatever. But am I alone there? And let's talk about Diana Wynne Jones' open to this book. Amy, what would you lead us off there?
Yeah, I love the opening. Fantasy is tricky, and I can get very easily overwhelmed with fantasy opens because they rely on names that sound fantastical, or the place is so out of this world that I don't even know how I fit into it. And I think, like, iconically, Tatooine, two suns, what would existence like there even be like? But Diana, she sort of is very clever. She references some
Can I get you to just,
folklore.
in your mic check, you read the
Oh,
first line. Will you read that for us?
of course, yeah. In the land of Ingary, did I say that right? Where such things as 7-league boots and cloaks of invisibility really exist, it is quite a misfortune to be born the eldest of 3. And I like it. I like that. I know, like fireworks, right? We have an invisibility cloak that's straight out of fairy tales. We have the reference to eldest of 3, which is also, in folklore like bearskin and even Beauty and the Beast. You don't want to be the eldest. That's not good. And so I can now take this. Okay, well, there's this place that sounds a little bit like fantastical, but I can insert it into my everyday life. I reread this book when we were in Iceland, and I just sort of plopped Howl's Moving Castle among the volcanic covered moss, and away I went having the best time because it's accessible, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Jared, you were nodding along with that first line. What's your take on that? And maybe since you just published your 12th novel, how hard are those first lines for you as a writer?
Well, they're harder for me than I think for Diana Wynne Jones. She's a genius. There's a lot riding on that first sentence, that first paragraph, like you were saying, Chris. And, Amy, it's so good, isn't it? That first line, it gives all these promises. It establishes a world. I mean, you're trying to do so much in that first line or paragraph. Let me just make my phone quiet. You got to make all these promises. You got to establish. You got to grab interest. And she just does in one sentence something that's just magical and powerful. You get these promises made. Oh, this is fairy tale stuff. Not only that, it's the people in it know they're in a fairy tale world somehow. That's incredible. So for me, it's a great first line. I actually didn't like the original cover. It didn't grab me, but I was reading literally every book in a library not too far from my house in Dallas at the time that I read this book for the first time. So I didn't care about the cover. I just needed something to get escape from, and this book was a great escape when I was 13 or 14. So it made all these promises, and then it delivered in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray, what's your thinking about this, and how are first lines for you? Is that a thing you struggle with, or you just first lines just flow right off your pen?
Um, I feel like once I find the perfect first line, it's great. But it takes me a bit I do struggle a bit to get that perfect first line. And actually, with Don't Date the Haunted, my first published book, the first line I got a lot of compliments on, but it was in the prologue. And so I had to end up cutting it. And it was really devastating. I tried weaving it into the next like into chapter 1, but it ended up becoming the second line instead of the first one because my editors kept saying, okay, no, you have to establish the world a little more. And so yeah, first lines are fun. I mean, for Spectre Inspector, the first line is very simple. I hope you like ghost stories.
Oh, that's
Because
solid.
yes.
Solid open. That's a solid first line.
For Howl's Moving Castle, though, I have to say it's a little okay. I love that. Yes, you get the setting. You get the idea that it is a kind of a fairy tale inspired land. And you get this 7 League Boots, which are instrumental in this story. Not in the movie, but in the book. They are key. They are used. They become a huge factor of how she gets around during the climax. But then no one is born the eldest of 3 unless you're triplets. And so I was like, hold on. They're not triplets. She wasn't the oldest of 3. She was they could have kept having kids, and then she would be the oldest of 4 or 5, whatever. And so for it to be, she was born the eldest of 3, I'm like, hold on. That's more of a mentality than a title. But it does also show a little bit of Sophie's mentality that she considers she was born this way, that she will always be this way.
Talk about that for a second. I think that's very interesting that you said that it's really more of a mentality than a biological fact. I mean, especially at the beginning. What are some of the things that Sophie exhibits that like make that sort of fairy tale trope a part of her character?
I mean, it kind of represents who she is, and even her curse when she gets it of like, this is who she is. This is how she sees herself. This is how she sees her future, what she sees of her past. And yeah, it completely shows throughout the entire book of this is who she is, and she kind of has to overcome that as she overcomes the curse.
Right. I mean, how many times does she say in the book, well, this is what happens when you're the oldest? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's fate.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do.
I found it a little annoying. I'm like, come on, girl, get over it.
That's okay. And I'm not convinced that at the end of the book she actually has fully gotten over it.
Well, I don't think she has to. I mean, I have 7 kids.
Okay.
I am close to all my kids in different ways. My oldest has he has a feeling about being the oldest. He feels he has a responsibility, and he doesn't tie his destiny to other people's approval or anything like that. He's an independent person. But I think it's great to have that family dynamic be established at the start, because that family dynamic is critical also to the end and to the whole story. And it doesn't end. She doesn't abandon them in any way. She still stays loyal to the people who are the most important to her family. So I think that's great.
That's a really interesting segue to a question that I have here that I was going to deal with later. We might as well do it now, about the concept of family and the definition that Jones plays with. By the way, no relation. My name is actually Chris Jones, and I don't know that very much of the talent transferred, but maybe it's because we're not biological. We're just both Welsh. Which I'm going to get to the Wales part of this in a minute. but Amy, I wanted to ask you in terms of family. You've got family. I mean, we open with it. You're the oldest of three daughters. I mean, you're basically laying that as part of the mortar of the story. But does the concept of family change over the course of the novel, and how does that work with the plot to kind of drive character development through what we're looking at here?
I definitely think the novel explores, and I think it digs deeper. I don't necessarily think that, even though there's a little bit of a suggestion that the stepmother is taking advantage of Sophie in the beginning of the book, she doesn't come across as a villain. And so, like, does it change? Well, I think we just kind of dig deeper and explore how family can show up, what family can be. Um, and I love that this is a found family story. And I love that Diana is really, affirming, hey, families come in very different, unique shapes. We've got Hal, we've got a fire demon, we've got, Michael, we've got Sophie. Sophie is 90 years old, for most of this book, even though it's a curse and all those things. But that's a complete family. And I think that there is so much like coziness and warmth from that exploration. But the book is very gentle. Like, even when this big curse happens and Sophie, becomes old and frail and all these things, she doesn't react like, oh my gosh, with sort of the horror, body horror. It's been a hot topic in Hollywood for a while, right? Lots of movies that I don't care to see that explore it, particularly for women. But there's acceptance, and there's, like, the stakes kind of stay gentle. And so I think it makes sense that with family, we're not like going from a place of my birth family rejected me, or I don't belong, or something really tragic, which, is important to explore in literature. But this story is sort of like, well, what can family be? How can we feel about family? Can family be what we need it to be? Can it look different? And all of that is very, sweet and gentle. And yes, it can. It can be celebrated.
I felt like at the beginning, well, that they point out another piece of genius. Jared will appreciate this because he's talked about what a good writer Diana Wynne Jones is. Right at the beginning, when she sort of sets up the family, I mean, she's immediately in the first line, she's the oldest of three, but then she talks about how the other two children were added, and they were added in different ways, and that the birth of the third child should, by fairy tale trope, turn the older two into the ugly sisters. And it didn't. In fact, they all grew up lovely. And I loved that twist, that subversion of the expected trope there. Nevertheless, Sophie is sort of the mother figure, and there's a whole master's thesis in here about how Sophie is actually the youngest of the three, in terms of the way that, in a lot of the ways that she behaves. She is the Cinderella character here. Even though she's the oldest sister, she really is playing the Cinderella role which is fantastic, actually, a really cool way of subverting that trope. But you brought something up that I with the found family thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And anybody that feels like this is something they want to address, they can do that. I want to talk about how the family is found a little bit. How Jones goes about constructing this family, and all of the members of it are constructed, and it comes together in a very, I don't know, maybe there are no typical found families, and they're all unique. But does anyone want to talk about a little bit about how they end up being a family, especially when Sophie doesn't even want to be there to start with?
I mean, technically, they all force themselves in. It starts with okay, technically, if we're starting with HOWL'S family, he kind of leaves Wales, but then so with if we're starting with Howl and Calcifer, they were the first to kind of join. And then Michael, he's there for months, and before Howl even takes him on. And then Sophie again, I'm just like, I'm just gonna barge down this door, force Calcifer to bow his head, and then even like the Scarecrow and the dog, they literally barge their way in and like force themselves into this. And I mean, they don't really become the family, but I guess they are marrying her sisters, so they will be family. It's fun. But like I'm the youngest of four actually. But we're four kids in 5 years, so we're all very close. We fought like crazy as kids, but now that we're adults and mature, we're best friends. Or at least I think we're best friends. And so I have a very strong appreciation for family stories, especially sibling stories. I have siblings in all of my main characters, or all of my main characters have siblings and have good and bad relationships, healthy and non-healthy relationships with their siblings. And so that's one point where I felt like the book really shines above the movie, because Sophie doesn't have sisters. Howl doesn't have a family in Wales. He doesn't have a sister with with nephews and nieces. Were so much fun to read about. And so, yeah, like I felt like that was a strong point for the book over the movie.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking as I am the oldest of seven, and I have 8 children. So I kind of see this a little bit from that side as well, and the annoyance that Sophie frequently has with her sisters, and yet when she's been apart from them for a while and actually has a chance to go and see them, how incredibly emotionally grateful she is to see them, and to be surprised a little bit at their ingenuity about how they have both, instead of fighting the fate to which they were assigned, they just sort of got together and said, we're going to fudge it like this. And everybody seems fine with that. Even the witch that Letty's assigned to, she finds out right away. Of course, it's her own spell, for crying out loud. I mean, how should she not recognize it? And she's like, it's fine. I don't want a student who doesn't want to be with me anyway. So I think, and then with that apprentice relationship, you have a bunch of apprentice relationships, which are also kind of familial relationships in interesting ways. We haven't heard from Jared for a minute, so I'm going to throw this over to Jared. You can talk about anything you want, but the question I have is, have you been involved in those kinds of relationships? Those things show up in your books, the kind of found family and the sort of mentor-student relationship. I hate the word mentee, and I will not use it, so that it's more of a mentor-student thing. But is that a thing that you pay attention to in this as well? And how does that show up in the stuff that you write as well?
Yeah, well, first off, everybody just make sure we say mentee every time we talk. It'll be fun. No,
Thanks. Appreciate
absolutely.
that.
So I'm here to show the love. So I think it's fun at the end where, I mean, spoilers all throughout this, guys. At the end where everybody's just kind of together, there's chaos happening, there's relationships being confirmed and affirmed, and Hal and Sophie are having their quick conversation. Hal says that great kind of closing line from him. I mean, this feels, I'm not going to apologize. This feels like the last scene of like a Fast and the Furious movie. Family is everything. It feels like everybody's together. It's all coming together. It's good, like a Spielberg movie. Everybody's okay. I love that kind of resolution to a story when everybody's found a relationship and they're all connected either through choice of this is the person I love or this is the person I've worked with. We find our family through shared experience, through lived experience. I grew up, I'm not going to get too deep. I grew up with 30 other kids, in a terrible, terrible situation. And we all had our own unique experiences, being in this thing for a long time. But we had a lot of shared experiences that were also abusive and negative. And I have a deep love for each of those folks. I don't like some of them because I think some of them are, well, I haven't felt that back from them and stuff, but we don't get along. But I still have a deep love for them, and I consider them essentially my pseudo siblings. So family can be found everywhere, and I love that Jones absolutely she depicts how the different varieties of families are. She's got Sophie with her ultra priority family of her sisters. We see Fanny in kind of we worry that she is exploiting, and then maybe she's taking advantage, and then she does marry this guy, but it turns out it's because Sophie made a really nice hat. But Fanny still comes back, and there's still great love for them because we build love. Calcifer and Hal, right? Hal captured Calcifer and saved his life, but then they made this deal, but they love each other. There's deep love for each other because of the shared experiences. And what I think the heart of all of that is we build family connection, be it with people who are related to by blood, or by getting married, or by having experiences together, by getting to know each other. The more we know somebody, the more we find out that there's so much more to the story than that first page, that first cover of the book. The more we love them. So peace be upon all of us by getting to know everybody, I guess, is the message there.
Yeah, I really like that. Even the relationship between Calcifer and Howl is fraught with difficulties and complexity. You have the sort of foreshadowing idea that this kind of relationship has a shelf life, and that it might be starting to turn here. The idea that the relationship might be getting to be a problem, and later on, Calcifer sort of confirms that and says both of us knew that this had started to go bad for us, and yet they couldn't get out of it themselves. They needed Sophie to get them out of it. And you mentioned the hat, and so I'm gonna bring this up and toss this out. Let's talk about Sophie's magic for a minute.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a universe that is inhabited by wizards, um, and um, and yet here is Sophie, who I would say at the beginning believes herself to be decidedly unmagical, and discovers through the course of the book that this might not be so. Can we talk about the magic system for a minute? Somebody want to address magic in this? I mean, it is a fairy tale, but it's also
Well, there are
more.
bits and pieces that are hard, like the seven league boots. Those are a hard magic. We know exactly what they can do. We know exactly how they can go wrong.
Okay.
But then there are also like Howl's magic, where it's just like there are symbols somewhere around the house and they are using them to move the house. It's obviously a struggle, but we don't really know how. And then there are
The
the
junkyard
poems, the
outside.
John
Sometimes we
Donne
make a
poem.
spell out of the stuff in the junkyard.
Yeah. And yeah, I'll let someone else speak on this.
No, you brought up hard and soft magic. So I want to, for those who might be watching, we're not familiar with this. Probably other people have done it, but that's a Brando Sando thing. Like Brandon has a codified system for what constitutes a hard magic system and a soft magic system. And I don't know if you were specifically referring to the Sanderson construction there, but that's become a sort of a fantasy like conception now. And just for those who might not know this, a hard magic system is one that has specific and definite rules about how it works, even if it's technically impossible. Within the universe, there are hard, specific rules, and we know what they are or most of them. I mean, obviously, discover some of those as we go along. Soft magic systems are the Force. We don't actually know what the Force can do, and we're constantly inventing new things that the Force can do, which is kind of a problem in the Star Wars universe. But a soft magic system is nebulous and undefined, and ultimately, according to Sanderson, you can't use that then to solve your problems because it will make your readers annoyed. Everybody violates these rules.
Yeah, no, that was a really good explanation. And in cozy fantasy, soft magic is kind of what readers are after. And I think that there's a little too much shade with, soft magic, because we live in a world where love, we try our best to define it, but it escapes us, like the definition. It means something different to everyone. We know that a warm home baked cookie is magical. It can cure all kinds of ailments, but like we can't explain why. And when we try to, it kind of falls apart. And when I go to read, I want to escape and I want to feel and I want my experience validated. I don't want to pick up another like system of chemistry. So the fact that Sophie's magic is with her words, like primarily, she speaks like to hats, she speaks to things that shouldn't talk back, and magic power kind of gets infused into them. Like I buy it. It's absolutely like what we understand about self-fulfilling prophecies, which is really kind of a fun thing to chew on. You know, Sophie keeps telling herself she's old, that this fits for her, you know, and the curse kind of hardens and Hal can't undo it. Sophie mends like one of Hal's suits and says all kinds of things about like how this is going to attract the ladies. She does this to her hats, and then it happens in a very literal way. But for me, this is really fun, and this sort of reflects my understanding of magic and the world at large. Is that yeah, it's here, we're trying to understand it, we can kind of make it happen, but we don't really, like, we can't pin down the rules. And I love that, and it's something that authors, myself included, have a lot of fun with in the cozy fantasy realm.
I can't believe that I've never thought of love as being a soft magic system
Oh yeah.
until you said that. But as soon as you said it, I thought, duh. I mean, it is a soft magic system. Um, and that actually is a perfect segue into the bleeding back and forth of the real world and the fantasy world, which I love the way she manages that. And I'm going to ask our Anglophile here, who's probably been to Wales.
It's the
You
one
haven't
place I
actually?
haven't been yet. Not
You
yet.
haven't been to Wales. Okay.
I've
I mean,
been
I'm a
there.
Jones. Have you?
He's
Okay.
been there.
So, well, and you have the keep calm and carry on
Yeah, been there.
poster on your. I love how you wipe the
Trying
fog
to, yeah,
away.
show it
I
a little
love how
bit.
you're doing that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that intentionally before. I think that's fantastic. Um, how how does she go about weaving the real world? And I've got to use that in air quotes because I'm not really sure what the real world is. As a novelist, that's one of the problems that you run into eventually, is that the real world and the, I don't even know what to call it, the fantasy world, the fictional world, the lines blur for me anyway, more and more. The more I write, the more I work with the real world and the fantasy world, the less sure I am I know what the difference is. Jared, how do you feel like when she handles the transition? How do you feel like that worked in the book?
Oh, real well, to keep it short. It's you know, looking a little bit at her background, you know, she took lectures from C.S. Lewis and from Tolkien. Um, and that is like I'm jealous for one thing. But you know, you've got Lewis's original Portal fantasy, right? But it wasn't like one was a fake world, one was a real world. These were worlds. These are worlds that exist. They're not just imagination. They're actual. They're real. They have things that happen in them. Their time passes differently in each of them. Magic and magic type stuff happens in one of them, and less visible magic and magic type stuff happens in, you know, what we call our analog non-magical world. Although there's magic here because love is magic, as a matter of fact. For us, it's my chicken noodle soup that brings people life in my home.
Yeah.
I think she handles it, you know, in a very classic way, that she doesn't care to answer all the questions that people might have about it. She just says, "This is Ingary's here, and Wales is here. You go to Wales, you're going to come home with a cold. That's how it's going to work, apparently, because Wales is like that. Turns out Scotland's a little like that too.
And here is this powerful wizard, possibly the most powerful wizard in the universe. And what can he not do? He can't cure a cold because there
Right.
is no cure for a cold. I
So great.
adored that.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's
Yeah.
more. It's the most powerful magic there is.
And
Colt
this
can't
ties into
stop it.
her whole Crestomancy, series as well. This is all a big part of that whole universe. I think it's great because she doesn't. This is like Pratchett too, right? He didn't care if people had all these questions. He wasn't going to answer them all. He's going to tell his cool story with these great characters. I will want to point something out about the magic. I am not a huge fan of hardcore magic systems. When I sell my books in person, people are like, "Well, tell me about the magic system." And I say, "Well, it's all based on will and what people really want to do, and that's pretty much it." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, sorry, no tin, no aluminum. It's just not. It's not a thing for me." The witch of the waste, her magic seems to be to try to make things into what they're not. Whereas Sophie's magic, where she speaks lovingly and kindly, is she helps things become what they are or could really be. And I think that those two dichotomous magic things are a big power. I mean, they're the source of the conflict here, and that's really Sophie's not doing magic to fix everything. Sophie's doing magic because she loves, and it ends up fixing everything.
Some of Sophie's magic is just sheer stubbornness. Early on in the book, I love the line where she discovered that being this age, she didn't care what she said or what she did. She was going to do what she wanted to do. And being old, let me tell you, that happens more and more often. The amount, and now I look back and think about the amount of time I spent in front of the mirror trying to make my hair look right when I was literally the only person on earth who cared, and that I could just quit caring. That was magic. That day was fantastic.
Well, if I can share,
please, yeah. And this is the round here. We're not done with my questions. We could do this for 3 hours. What do you want to talk about? Go ahead, Ray. What's something you want to bring up to talk about?
My edition, it has an interview of Mrs. Jones at the end. And so the interview asks the characters in Howl's Moving Castle, Castle in the Air, and House of Many Ways must word their wishes and spells very carefully. Is it important that magic not be too easy? And her answer is magic is not easy, although it seems it should be. You have to think through carefully what you need your magic to do. Otherwise, some tiny spell might have disastrous consequences. For instance, if you were to make 2 and 2 add up to 3 instead of 4, you would change the way the whole universe works, and it is quite possible that everyone would die of it. So you have to make your magic very precise. Howl knows this, and so does Calcifer, but Sophie is not always so careful. And just thought that was a really interesting way that she worded and explained her magic system, and also explained the understanding of her characters, and they understand the magic system as well.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. And I love that the author's like, no, there's care here. Because I think another part of Sophie's magic is that she created a home for her family. Sure, Hal built this amazing castle, but like Sophie, cleaned it, scrubbed it, cooked, cleaned, mended. She did all of these ordinary things for her found family, but with huge consequences, right? And I love also that that's part of her magic. That's part of the care that I think Diana, the author, wants us to sort of realize is, oh yeah, there is a very practical kind of magic that we can all access for the people we love, or there are abilities, skills that don't involve ingesting metal or flying through the sky or wielding power to slay people that are tangible and just as necessary and magical. And so I like that. Thanks for sharing that, Ray, about the care, even with the words. Like it trickles down, I think, throughout the book.
You also, Sophie's not as careful. Part of the reason is I think Sophie's not aware entirely of how magic works. She hasn't spent any time with wizards. A bunch of the time, her magic is serendipitous. She's not intending to do. She is hardly ever intending to do magic until toward the end when she decides to use her stick as a magic wand. I had a grandmother who reminded me a great deal of her stick, which had a name and a personality and the whole thing. But Sophie's magic continues to interfere with the universe in really fascinating and complicated ways when she, tells the scarecrow to go 10 times faster. That turns out to be critically important later on. Freeing the dog from the hedge, which she didn't want to do because she was tired and it's hard to bend down and whatever, but she did it anyway. And turns out that was a really good thing, etc. It's sort of the serendipitous magic that it's a mark of really good craft to be able to make those things come back into the story in fascinating, unexpected ways at the end. It was one of the things that I like the most. Jared, is there something about this book that you want to say that we haven't touched on?
Well, it's real good. I want to just kind of enhance what you guys are saying, or at least affirm it. I think, the serendipitous part of it is it's her choices. She is making a choice each time. This is a character-driven choice that she makes each time, and it does come around to making it all come together well. I mean, the Witch of the Wastes, the villain, she brings about her own downfall because she tries to make Sophie into something that she's not. But this gives Sophie the ability to kind of take control of her life. I love stories that have people's choices, be they for good or evil, be what brings them success or their downfall, and that's absolutely what happens here. There's a part of it that gets me. It really gets me thinking, and it got me thinking more than ever before. When Sophie is told that Calcifer and Hal think that she's keeping the curse on herself. I mean, I think I have thoughts on that, but I don't have anything definitive. I think that's a great question for the people here. How is that true, or are they wrong? Is Sophie keeping the curse on herself?
This is sort of an offhand comment at one point. I can't remember whether it was
Right.
Calcifer or Hal who said, I tried to remove it, but since you're keeping it on yourself,
Yeah.
and Sophie's like, what do you mean I'm keeping it on myself? That's ridiculous. And yet, I think it might have been Ray said a little bit earlier that this is who I am. That for a moment, that as much as she doesn't like being creaky in the morning, and believe me, that's a thing.
Yes.
But to an extent, she felt like the curse had actually, in some ways, turned her into who she really was. And then it allowed her, because she was now not playing a role as the oldest sister, her sisters were gone, she was off by herself, it allowed her to be who she actually was. But as you say, she chose this. She has opportunities to leave over and over and over again, and she doesn't leave. Sometimes it's because something stops her, but nothing stops Sophie when she wants to do something. Nothing and no one is as powerful as Sophie's stubbornness, and yet she doesn't leave, and she makes choices all the way along that demonstrate to herself who she is, a thing which I feel like, especially at the beginning, she really did not know. Amy's
Yeah.
eyebrow.
That self-discovery is cool. I think it's great.
I was comparing what you were saying about Sophie to Hal when he gets sick, and I'm trying to think like, well, was his over dramaticness, contributing to what he was feeling and how he was trapped? But I can't get over just how funny that whole chapter is, and some of the lines. Like, I want to just read when when Hal says, "I feel ill. I'm going to bed where I may die," and then he says, "Help me, someone. I'm dying from neglect up here." I was rolling around in Denmark. We were in Denmark at this point, just laughing because like this is everyone who's had a cold ever. This is how it feels, and it's the chemistry between Sophie and Hal. There's a lot of friction there that's super fun, but very very different from sort of the whimsical romance of Hal and Sophie in the Studio Ghibli film. Um, it feels very apples and oranges, but I kind of love that Hal is he is a drama queen. Like that is who he is, you know? And there's more passages that are just precious about, you know, him blowing his nose and just making all this like noise about moaning and like being just so uncomfortable being ill. And Sophie is just like, "Oh, fine, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go fix this." And they feel like an old married couple. Um, and which is kind of fun, you know, in the end when he says, "I think we should live happily ever after," to Sophie when she's, you know, the curse is gone. And it's the big, we called it the Fast and the Furious finish. Um, is that right? But because you know they're gonna keep being themselves because they change, but not that much, and they're gonna. I mean, it's hysterical. It'd be fun to follow them and invite them over to dinner parties just to see them continue to be. You know, Hal is really into how
Emo.
amazing he is. You know, and Sophie is not gonna let him get away with much. It's fun.
Can I mention something from a writing technique standpoint? I'm curious as to what you think about this. So when the curse is finally broken at the end, it's not a thing. I mean, it is a thing, but it's not a thing. Sophie doesn't know this.
Right.
And from a craft standpoint, I found that very, very interesting. As if, and maybe this goes along with things that we've been saying, that at the point when the curse is broken, that is the point at which it stopped being relevant to anything. She didn't care about it anymore. As soon as she didn't care about it anymore, then it wasn't a curse. When you read through, it's done mostly in dialogue and then little paragraphs where it said, if Sophie had any ability to notice anything else, she would have seen this happening over here and this happening over here. And she's sort of running through prologue-y or through epilogue-y kinds of things here, setting up the happily ever after. But Sophie is paying no attention to the fact that the curse has been lifted. I would have written that scene very differently, which is why I am not Diana Wynne Jones. Just from a technique standpoint, the understated way that scene is constructed seemed to me to be, to use Jared's term, a work of genius. To be able to have that light a touch on a scene that this is the climax, right? The curse is lifted, and now she and Hal can get together, and she's letting, in sports parlance, she's letting the crowd tell the story, not calling attention to it. Are there other places in here where you're like, the craft here just really jumps off the page at me? What this author is doing is terrific.
I like the imagery. I mean, the first hint that I have that the curse is lifted, just since you're talking about that, is, you know, she's pushing, I think it's when she's pushing the heart back into Hal, and we get this picture that her red hair is kind of in the way, so she has to move it out of the way, but she doesn't notice it. I thought that was like, wait a second, the curse is gone. That's so cool. But another area of that was just how well she did the Scarecrow, which is scary. You know, she does some great terrifying moments with the Scarecrow. But once again, the Scarecrow's actually trying to do a good thing, and ultimately, when they start to get past their fear of something that's typically scary, more understanding comes, and the story gets to move forward in the positive way. Once again, this great theme of there's more to the story, there's more to people. Don't just snap to judgment and live in the fear you might have of people you don't understand. Anyway, I think it's all very well crafted. Kind of like, I think Diana Wynne Jones and Pratchett are very similar in their ability to do that kind of light touch that blows me away.
Right.
There was a moment in the first chapter where there was an awareness of the narrator. They say, you know, the May Day before this story really starts. And I had admired the restraint of Diana in this moment, because one of the allowances you get with cozy fantasy is to have a narrator that breaks rules, right? And, I think of Trust of the Emerald Sea, like that narration, all those narration choices, like very kind of out of the box and quirky and fun. But she just pulled us just the littlest bit out of the story there to make us feel like, yeah, this is once upon a time. Yeah, you can feel nostalgic. Like, yeah. And that was the only time I saw it, but I was like, "Ooh, she's very good." And then the other one I want to asterisk and give a gold star to is where she talks about the feeling of the denim on like somebody's back of knees when they're in whales and how like uncomfortable it was. And that image carried with me for years. Like I first read this book, I think 2 decades ago, and I still remember, oh yeah, denim can do that. Oh, what a weird thing to like spend time like describing, because the the choices she makes, again, it's like very light touch, like Jared was saying, like but it's just a work of art. It's awesome.
Ray, you get to wrap us up, and we've burned through an hour here.
Oh,
So, believe it or not,
Um, I mean, yeah, because I spent an entire book exploring the idea of a fairy tale person coming to our modern world, exploring it and seeing like what is this horseless carriage driving way too fast and all of the fun, crazy things. So when they got to Wales. In the book, I was so ecstatic. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just like one of my books, except she wrote it first and she does it so subtle and beautifully. And then also, yeah, I needed to talk to somebody who read the book because it's not in the movie. I wanted to talk to somebody who had read the book. I'm like, I need to share somebody. It just got real, literally. And
That's awesome.
none of my friends had read it, so I was so excited to talk with you guys. I'm like, you guys have read it. We can talk about how it just got real.
yeah,
But
and
also,
go ahead.
well, and I left, and I made a note while reading it, but then I forgot about it until going over my notes again. Her walking stick is a spear. It's so. I mean, well, and okay, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but she pulls the stick. So I'm on page 40 in my version. She pulled the stick that had trapped the dog out of the hedge and found it was a proper walking stick, well trimmed and tipped with iron. And like, go figure, she uses it as a weapon later to beat on the witch and to like set it on fire, and it becomes this thing that helps save them time a little bit to. And like, just imagining her walking around with this spear everywhere, and she's like, "Yo, Leah, this is my walking stick." She doesn't call it a spear, so maybe it's not, but still, like, it's a stick that's tipped with iron, and like the imagery that can create, and also the little nuances of this old woman walking around and waving her stick around at people.
That would be a thing my grandmother would have done. For sure. Have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation here. We're at the end of our chat about this, and I hope that those of you who are listening get a sense that we inhabit a magical world. One of the things I loved about Sophie, I'll get this in here, is that when she describes Wales, relatively modern day Wales, her description of it is no less magical than the description of the things that happen in her own world, which are magic. But we inhabit a magical world where vehicles move by themselves down the road, where we have devices that allow us to broadcast from 5 separate locations across 2 different platforms to ideally up to dozens of people who might be actually watching this broadcast, recasting satellites to make this thing happen. It's pretty incredible, the world that we live in, and to ignore that magic, I think, misses some of the great joy of being alive in the 21st century. My great thanks to Jared, to Ray, and to Amy, and especially to Diana Wynne Jones, who is regaling the choir's immortal with her brilliant tales and allowing us to still partake of the wondrous things that she created. Thanks as well to the LTUE staff and the tireless work that they do. Ryan Boucher, who nobody gets to see or hear, but is the only reason that this is working at all. And we're grateful to him for his work, not just with this, but with all the things that he does with LTUE. And strongly encourage you to come to Life, the Universe, and Everything next February in Provo, Utah. And we hope that we get to see all of you there.